Good morning. I'm Duncan, and I'm here to talk about software transparency and the software bill of materials, or SBoM. Start with a little about me. I'll tell you the main takeaway right up front. I'll go into the details on the whats and whys. I'll babble for a bit and have time for questions. When I'm done, I'll have a prize for the first question. How many of you have heard an SBoM before this week? Who here cybersecurity is the main part of your job? Who here safety is the main part of your job? Anybody in healthcare? Manufacturing? IoT? Industrial control systems? You can read my bio to find more about me. I've been thinking evilly for a long time, since before the Gulf War in 1990 and 1991, when I got to hack into foreign computers. This taught me how bad the defense is and how easy it is to be on offense, and so therefore I've spent most of my career on the defense. After I retired, I rate limit my consulting to a quarter time and do a lot of pro bono work trying to help the defense, and this talk is about one of those activities, software transparency, and in particular, the software bill of materials, or SBoM. I'm on the Software Transparency Working Group run by the NTIA in the Department of Commerce. Now, I've been pushing for SBoMs for over 5 years, and it's now beginning to get some traction. It's making it into certain federal regulations, and the Department of Commerce is trying to harmonize those needs across the FDA, DoD, etc. I'm going to start off with what I hope is what you'll take away from this talk, and then I'll explain more on why that should be true. Takeaways from the talk are pretty simple. If you are choosing or using products with software, demand SBoMs from your suppliers. And if you're producing products with software, provide SBoMs to your customers. It's that simple. Now, all analogies are wrong, but some are useful. Now, SBoM can be likened to an ingredients list. Now, here's the ingredients list from a shampoo bottle. Why? So you know what's in it. Maybe you're allergic to trisodium ethyl etidynamine disuccinate, whatever that is. But sometimes you want to know what's in something, and therefore we show the ingredients. A similar analogy, also wrong but closer, is a parts list. Here's a German Mauser rifle. It not only quotes the ingredients, it includes the recipes, includes how they put together, including how there's compound parts, there's parts made of other parts. So this talk is intended to show the benefits of an SBoM, no matter who you are, whether you're someone who produces software, someone who chooses software, or someone who uses software. The SBoM will benefit you, whichever role you have. And there are many benefits to SBoM on how they might benefit you depending on which perspective. One benefit is cost. I'm a security geek. I like the fact that you get increased security. This is the benefit closest to my heart, although I like cost also. Knowing your licensing is important, knowing the terms and conditions you're bound by. Compliance is another benefit. And finally, in certain applications, safety probably being one of them, high assurance is important. It's particularly important to DoD and weapons and things like that. Now, you don't need to read this chart. The point in it is all the boxes have text. All three perspectives, the columns, have something of value in all 5 benefits. You can read the NTIA report for details, and I'll just mention how it does lower cost for the producers and for the choosers and for the operators. And it's increasing security in all 3 as well. Say just a word on the lowering the cost of operate. The fact that you have an SBoM not only tells you, hey, this is when a new CV comes out, a new computer vulnerability comes out, gets announced. You can say, hey, does it affect me? It's probably more important because you have the SBoM, all these components that you can cross off the list of, oh, I don't need to worry about that, I don't need to worry about that, I don't need to worry about that, because they don't have the component. So you can focus on, oh, this one does have that component. The vulnerability may or may not be exploitable, but you can then dive into detail on that particular thing that is related to the CVE and get to ignore the rest, as opposed to running around like your hair's on fire. So whenever SBoMs are brought up with security, someone is bound to ask, want to help the hackers more than the defenders? The simple answer is no. Now, I could spend this entire talk on the details of this. In fact, I could spend an entire hour talk on the details of this. But the easiest analogy is an ostrich with its head in the sand. Just because you don't know what the software you have is, so therefore you don't know the security risk of it, doesn't mean the hackers don't. Okay. In fact, it increases your security risk because you can't see the danger, just like the ostrich can't see it. Now, to be fully correct, you should evaluate your choices using FAIR, which I talked about at this conference yesterday. You should be doing it in terms of economic risk. In any particular case, if you applied the FAIR model, I'd bet 90 times out of 100 times the answer would be that SBoMs help, and they don't even hurt at all, let alone the benefit is greater than the cost. There's no cost. Now, what is this SBoM that we're talking about? Well, the core aspect that's sort of in every SBoM is what we're calling the MVI, or minimal viable identifier. A little bit of a takeoff of minimal viable product from the Agile methodology. It's a hash over the executable. It's who you got it from, a supplier, and it's some sort of human readable name and version. That by itself helps you a lot, but what you usually need it is in conjunction with some other information. But the other information is use case dependent. If you're doing licensing, you need to know about the license. If you're doing vulnerability, you're doing security, you need to know about vulnerabilities that are affecting it. Those are two different use cases that need two different supplementary pieces of information, and I'll cover a couple of those. Sort of the opposite of minimum viable is probably the high assurance cases. If you're working for the DoD and work on a weapons system, you not only need to know what's in it and everything about it, all these other circles, you even need to know who made it and how they made it, because that factors into how much you trust it. Now, I'm the security geek, so vulnerability management is why I care about SBoM. The dotted circle here is interesting because it shows something outside the SBoM that you correlate with the SBoM with the minimal viable information to find the vulnerabilities that you care about. Now, this is a medical device and some admin machines in a bunch of hospitals. And they're vulnerable because one piece of software buried deep in the guts of the devices and the operating system, so multiple uses, as one particular software is used in multiple cases, it affects all of them. Now, the NTIA group is running a proof of concept with the FDA and several device manufacturers and several hospitals or healthcare delivery operators to find the benefits and the problems in using these recommendations. This is not the Starship Enterprise. This is a set of SBoMs that were created for a set of machines in a particular project and then compared against a vulnerability catalog, and a slew of vulnerabilities were found. It turns out this particular case was a process problem because the patching was occurring, but they were leaving the unpatched code there as well. It was not deleted, so they're leaving 2 copies of everything around. And that was easy enough to fix with a process change. It made this much cleaner. This is a relationship diagram. It's quite complicated, but it's to show that the SBoM is not just the ingredients list of the product. That's what's shown in green. But sometimes you download software from outside, for example, in JavaScript. Or sometimes the software that is in the product is derived from software. It's a subset of a piece of open source, or it's a fork and a modified version of a piece of open source. So there's a lot of complexity, but all of it's expressible in the SBoM. A little bit on SBoM mechanics. There's an ISO standard on something called a SWID. It's not designed for as many of the use cases as I described. In fact, it was designed specifically for asset inventory. It was designed mainly for proprietary software. And SPDX, or Software Package Data Exchange, was designed mainly for open source software, and was mainly designed associated with licensing. But it turns out that both of these can do all of the things on that petal chart, on that flower chart with all the circles on it that I showed earlier. So they can either of them can contain all the ancillary information you need to handle all those use cases. And so they're basically interchangeable and easy enough to convert between, and I'm not going to pick between the two. Now, what should you take away from this talk? Pretty simple, really. I hope that you demand SBoMs from your suppliers, and I hope you provide SBoMs to your customers. For more information, you can follow the work on the software transparency group going on at the NTIA. Dan Geer is a thought leader in cyber, and I like how he ends his talks, so I blatantly use his ending. There is never enough time. Thank you for yours. Feel free to contact me. SBoM, software transparency, are one of my passions. Any questions? And I have, again, a book here for the first good question.